In the not-so-distant future, as humanity ventures beyond the boundaries of the solar system, a solitary research station stood near the majestic Saturn. This station was no ordinary facility. It was equipped with state-of-the-art technology and housed a group of scientists from various parts of the world. Among these scientists was Maida Tanaka, a brilliant young researcher. Maida was tasked with the challenging mission of developing methods to penetrate the dense atmospheric layers of Saturn using radio waves, thus gaining insights into previously unexplored areas. Here, Maida could focus on advancing radio wave imaging technologies to explore the structure, composition, and dynamics of Saturn's atmosphere, potentially unlocking new insights into the mysterious processes within the depths of the gas giant. The research station orbited the gas giant, and Maida spent her days collecting data and conducting experiments. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until unexplained incidents began to occur. Maida stood transfixed before the control monitors of the research station, her eyes locked onto the flickering sensor data. The initial signs of irregularities seemed inconspicuous: slight fluctuations in energy measurements, unexplained fluctuations in atmospheric pressure values. As a station researcher, she was accustomed to space presenting its own challenges. However, these disturbances were accumulating, and Maida could no longer ignore that something peculiar was afoot. Mysterious interferences in communication signals and eerie, inexplicable shadows whispering like ghosts through the deserted corridors of the station deeply unsettled her. The other members of the research station seemed deaf to Maida's concerns. When she addressed her colleagues about the strange occurrences, she was met with skeptical glances and dismissive gestures. Some attributed it to the stress of isolation, while others believed it to be technical glitches. Yet Maida couldn't shake the feeling that something far larger and more ominous was at play. Determined to uncover the truth, Maida delved into the records of the missing scientists. In doing so, she stumbled upon clues indicating that the station had been attributed to a project called Gateway. However, what precisely this project entailed and why it was shrouded in secrecy remained veiled in darkness. As she continued to delve into the documents, Maida stumbled upon remnants of an old experimental facility that had evidently been hidden and forgotten. Room designations had been plastered over, traces of a past carefully obscured. Yet Maida wasn't deterred. She sensed she was on the trail of a truth that extended far beyond what she had imagined. One day, while tidying her quarters in the research station, Maida came across a hidden ventilation shaft behind a shelf. Something about the way it seemed slightly displaced fascinated her. With considerable effort and deft fingers, she opened the shaft and discovered an old, dusty USB stick. The discovery held the promise of a secret, and Maida, drawn by its mysterious aura, plugged the stick into one of her computers. On the stick, Maida found an old diary apparently belonging to a scientist named Alexa, a Swedish researcher specialized in spectral analysis. Alexa had used the diary to document her thoughts and progress in past experiments. The diary was filled with data, diagrams, and personal entries. As Maida connected the USB stick, the unsecured data from Alexa's diary unfolded before her eyes. The words of the Swedish scientist took her on a journey through her thoughts and experiments. In particular, the upcoming experiment, which dominated the records, sent Maida's thoughts spinning in all directions. Maida pondered the consequences of the experiment. The excitement in Alexa's entry stood in stark contrast to her own uncertainty. What if something went wrong? Her thoughts drifted to speculation about what could happen. Could uncontrolled energies infiltrate and cause chaos? Or, worse yet, could the connection to a parallel universe become not only visual but also physical? The security measures she knew raced through her mind, but Alexa's records conveyed an impression of enthusiasm and confidence. But the further she delved into the entries, the clearer it became that these analyses served not only for the exploration of Saturn but also for the investigation of parallel universes. A day before the final test, Maida could almost feel the excited anticipation. Alexa wrote of her enthusiasm to finally capture images from a parallel universe. The excitement and ambitions of the Swedish scientist practically leapt off the pages. This discovery led Maida to the realization that the research station had a long history of experiments with the boundaries between dimensions. Alexa had made groundbreaking progress, and now Maida was faced with the responsibility of understanding the results of these experiments. As she continued to scroll through the files on the USB stick, she came across images of the old crew of the research station. The faces of the scientists from back then stared back at her, and something incredible caught her eye. 3 of the members of the current crew bore a striking resemblance to the old scientists. It wasn't just the physical similarity. It was also the similarities in facial features, posture, and even the way they smiled in the pictures. This was more than just a coincidence. The images showed 3 women from the current crew, and their resemblance to the scientists of the old crew was remarkable. The striking similarity in their faces made her consider the possibility that it might be more than just a coincidence. Had the dimensional rift they had explored back then had more effects than just observing a parallel universe? A feeling of confusion overwhelmed her, and she decided to delve deeper into the research documents to find possible clues for this amazing connection. The idea that they were not only continuing the work but also the essence of their predecessors in this space-time domain opened new doors for her thoughts and explorations. Deeply immersed in the old research documents and the mysterious connection between the generations, she eventually came across a document titled Emergency Plan. The file contained detailed instructions and protocols for unforeseen events or security risks at the research station. The night passed in tormenting unrest, and sleep eluded her. An indistinct feeling of disquiet gnawed at her peace, and her thoughts wandered through the labyrinthine corridors of the research station. Eventually, she gave up trying to force sleep and instead decided to focus on the data on her PC. With an almost meditative calmness, she transferred the information to her phone, the screens glowing in the dim light of the late hour. As she went through the files, she noticed the additional precautions and countermeasures outlined in the emergency plan. The words seemed to whisper in the quiet cabin, and the solemn formulations amplified the unsettling thoughts haunting her mind.
At the moment I tried to grasp the significance of these emergency guidelines, I suddenly heard a knock on my door. An unexpected sound in the otherwise silent environment of the research station. The knocking was muted but still distinctly audible, and a feeling of unease washed over me. I hesitated before slowly approaching the door. Thoughts of the emergency plan and the possibility of unforeseen events heightened my tension. Who was knocking, and why now? As I opened the door, Nora stood before me suddenly, a member of the crew, with a serious expression indicating she had urgent news to deliver. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold shiver ran down my spine for a moment. However, before I could recover from my surprise, a cry of fear almost escaped me. I forced myself to put on a smile and conceal my inner panic. "Nora, you really startled me. What's the matter?" I asked, my voice tense. Nora entered and began to impart something important to me with seriousness. While externally attempting to maintain composure, my mind struggled with the sudden encounter. Behind my facade of control, my thoughts raged wildly. The connection between the scientists, the emergency plan, and now this encounter with Nora, all these puzzles began to coalesce into a complex picture. A mixture of fear and curiosity boiled within me as I invited Nora to take a seat. We had much to discuss, and the secrets of the research station seemed poised to be unveiled. Nora asked for my assistance with an experiment for tomorrow, a graphical examination of Saturn from her lab. I thought that's just an excuse to work in her private area? My mind raced as I pondered how best to handle this situation. Something told me I needed to be extremely cautious. "I would really love to help, Nora, but I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well and have strong stomach pains," I lied with a pained expression. It was a fabricated excuse to avoid the potential danger that could lurk in this experiment. Nora seemed concerned, but I insisted that I needed rest. With a polite smile, I asked her to leave my room. As she withdrew, I immediately locked my door. A sense of unease washed over me, and I knew I had to be extremely cautious. Behind closed doors, I could let my thoughts roam freely and contemplate how to proceed. The puzzle of the connection between the generations and the eerie similarities had to be further explored, but with caution and a healthy dose of skepticism. The night passed in tortuous restlessness, and sleep eluded me. Every attempt to force myself into the darkness of dreams seemed futile. An indistinct feeling of unease gnawed at my peace, and my thoughts wandered through the labyrinthine corridors of the research station. Eventually, I gave up trying to force sleep and instead decided to turn to the data on my PC. With an almost meditative calm, I transferred the information to my phone, and the screens glowed in the dim light of the late hour. The darkness of the night enveloped me as I delved deeper into the data. Hours passed, and the uncertainty about the events to come left me in a state of tense vigilance. With one last glance at the screens, I decided to endure a restless night filled with thoughts and uncertainties.
Maida could deduce from the documents that in the event of a portal breach, the entire station was to be charged with high voltage. This was not a reassuring realization, especially considering the eerie occurrences she had observed in the past few days. The feeling of unease intensified as she imagined what could happen if the portal indeed became unstable. An idea sparked in Maida's mind, an idea so crazy and daring that it almost seemed ingenious. She recalled the Tesla coil she had once seen in an old research report. A device capable of generating and channeling massive amounts of electricity. A cold shiver ran down Maida's spine as she imagined this Tesla coil being mounted on top of the station. The thought of the entire station being charged with such power was both eerie and fascinating. And the worst part was that she was alone. No one was in the public areas of the station at that time. Maida felt like the lone guardian of a dark secret waiting to be revealed. In the shadowy corridors of the dimly lit research station, Maida proceeded with utmost caution. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest as she discreetly made her way to the workshop. With each step, the sense of urgency intensified, the drive to complete the Tesla coil project outweighing any risk. With skillful movements, Maida bypassed the usual protocols and locked herself in the workshop. Every action was executed with extreme precision to ensure her activities went unnoticed. High-performance capacitors, electromagnets, and insulation materials silently disappeared from their usual places as Maida concealed herself amidst the silence. Determined to construct the Tesla coil, Maida turned to innovative solutions. She leveraged her knowledge of the research station to discreetly gather the necessary materials. 3D printing technology was utilized to fabricate the holder for the primary coil, while a simple plastic broomstick was improvised for the secondary coil. Each step was executed with utmost precision to maximize the station's limited resources. The electrical control of the Tesla coil was a delicate part of the project. Maida relied on a solid-state battery and multiple MOSFETs connected in parallel for precise control. Using her smartphone and an Arduino board, she could remotely control the coil and adjust the excitation frequency while skillfully integrating it into the station's power system. Maida took a deep breath as she activated the switch for the Tesla coil. A dull hum filled the air, accompanied by a bright flash that seemed to dart through the depths of space. Suddenly, everything changed before her eyes. The space station seemed to vibrate, and a sharp pain shot through Maida's head. She clutched her temples, her senses swirling, and then everything went black around her. When she regained consciousness, she felt weak and disoriented. She lay on the floor of the research station, surrounded by a dull hum that slowly faded away. In the next moment, Maida was awakened by one of the crew members. Confused and groggy, she slowly sat up, and as she looked around, she recognized the familiar faces of her colleagues. But something was different. When she spoke, they no longer called her Maida, but Mia. "Mia, how are you feeling?" one of the crew members asked, concerned. "You were unconscious for 2 days." Mia stared at them, bewildered, her mind swirling with confusion. How could this be? What had happened in the past few days? And why were they suddenly calling her Mia? Memories of what had happened slowly flooded back into her consciousness. The activation of the Tesla coil, the piercing pain, the sudden awareness of the unknown. And then, unconsciousness. The thought made Mia shudder. What had happened while she was unconscious? What had changed? The countdown for the charging had expired, and in a dramatic moment, Maida had successfully closed the portal through a massive collimated field. The visitors from the other dimension were withdrawn, and the boundaries between realities stabilized. Exhausted but victorious, Mia left the research station and returned to Earth. Mia continued her research on Earth, but the memories of those days on the space station would accompany her forever. And although she was now called Mia and her form had changed, she would never forget who she truly was, Maida, the fearless explorer of the boundless dimensions of the universe.